Hello, Jack. Happy Thursday and happy surviving AI episode. I don't know, I guess
Yeah, we should get
eight.
the count. Yeah, we should get the count correct. Yeah,
And I was looking at it today and I was like, I guess, but yeah, it's wonderful. It's wonderful to have, I look forward to it every week. So
yeah,
taking
me
the
too.
time for
Yes.
this. And as this changes, I think today is actually going to be really helpful to me and maybe to many because I'm like many users, not always aware of like the what goes on in the background. So I'll give you
Mhm.
a quick, we started this what with GPT-3, I guess was the big one that happened a couple years ago that was kind of useful.
Mhm.
And here you have to me an interface that's interesting because it's pretty minimal, right? It just kind of says, here's a box and goes back and forth, right? And I
Mhm.
think about a year, seemed like a year after that, they updated the models, but then they added voice, which was a big deal to me because there's something
Mhm.
particularly interesting to me about voice. We can get into that in a minute, right?
Yeah, yeah. Modalities. Yeah, very good.
Yeah, modalities, exactly. And I guess on the
Mhm.
sidelines, we've got imagery and stuff like that. But honestly, that stuff, I come from visual art background, so none of that, all that seemed very um, distracting because the training set to me is pretty limited, right? Whereas the training set for GPT, I think, is all of Wikipedia, every good book ever written. God knows what they've trained this thing on,
Mhm.
right? So we should never
Mhm.
forget the trainings on these things is not trivial, right? So,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and they are dubbing into synthetic data, right? Which basically means that they are trying to make the input more consistent, so that it's easier to train and you don't need so much. Because let's say if you have inconsistent input, right? Let's say in some area there is going to be five posts and five papers that say X is good, and then there's going to say, hey, another set of paper, X is bad, right? So they are trying to maybe kind of compress that knowledge and make some decisions, before the AI actually starts to digest all this. So yeah, things are changing a little bit.
Well, which makes sense because I think everything kind of goes into random experimentation turning into um, optimization, right? I mean, we're kind
Mhm.
of optimization freaks in America. Sometimes I
Mhm.
think to our detriment, right? Like we're probably need to be more experimental with this technology because it allows us to be that. But instead, we will probably start to, optimize, as we just said. Which, I mean, that's fine if it's about economy. That's great. I don't know. I don't care, but I'm still getting back to like, here we go to some place and we interact with a model, and that model can change. And I have noticed that GPT has changed up its interface since there was also GPT, Claude, Perplexity, Notebook LM, all of which I've used interchangeably, and I always or not fine, but I found at least GPT is trying to keep up, and so they keep changing their interface. So they have more of a dual interface now. All these things are interesting, right? But not solving
Mhm.
our problem because I want to create a service, right? I want to create well, not necessarily a game, but you can stop me at any point. The concept, I think, came from well, just what's what could be the new pedagogy? We talked about it last week, right? Like, hey, we've always had textbooks and we have lecturers like me and
Mhm.
you, and we try to shove information into people's heads and we test them and then give them a grade. And, here
Mhm.
you go. There you go. Education system in a nutshell, right?
Mhm.
It's all well and good, but you and I both know that it's not completely effective. It tends to work with pretty motivated people, right? And also at certain levels, you can just lose people. I always feel like math in grade school, you really miss the boat if you get turned off of math for whatever reason, because math is a pretty good thing to know. It's pretty useful, right? But they don't
Yeah,
teach
of
it
course. Mhm.
they don't teach it. They teach it in a way, I guess, that because I think there's a right answer, it kind of messes everything up. Whereas English tests, you can learn to fake it. Maybe that's why, like, you can always build up your skill while pretending to have the skill. Does that make any sense in many areas? Whereas math, it's like, well, if you don't know that answer, you just don't know it, which is a shame because I think guessing in math is actually a really good skill. But yeah, that's just me, you know. Rough estimation, by the way, very good skill to have, and it's a
Yeah,
mathematical skill,
exactly.
right?
Yeah, mental math, probably could be one of the foundations that is not talked about at all. Yeah.
Completely. So we don't have great abilities, but one opportunity with LLMs, right? So here I'm doing the pitch right now. So I've got a local models, right? I've downloaded DeepSeek and been playing around with local models, which is fun. Meaning you don't well, this is where it is fun, but it also is puzzling. So I know the things I can do just because there's a box for me to do it. Like I can have a system prompt, right? Which is interesting to me because I want to start experimenting with something. Do you mind if I show a very simple diagram? And in fact, you can join me on this if you
Yeah,
want.
yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
All right, let's see if I can get okay, yeah, I do want that. Teams, man. Okay, so here it is. And if you want to see this, are we seeing anything? Yeah, we're
Yes.
okay, you're seeing something. I'm going to share it because I just found this tool. I thought it was cool because of some actually some super fancy uh, AI guy was using this tool. Where is sharing? Here we go. I'm putting the link in. Oh, no, that's not the link. Copy link. Paste. Okay. Anyway, so we're talking about game design, right? So let's say the game was the game of learning something. Fair enough, something like that. I don't know. Yeah, and where I thought would be a great input or an area to be trained in is it like a podcast. Now, the reason I say a podcast is that they tend to be about some topic and there's usually a back and forth, right? So podcasts are a popular form of edutainment. How does that sound? Are you with me so far on podcasting?
Oh yes. Oh yeah, yeah, totally. I mean, edutainment is probably a good way to maybe describe what I was thinking about as well, right? Like, how can we change education so that it's or what the change should be, right? And one of the things that I think would be a good indicator is, let's say we take a 10-year-old boy, right, and give him or her a choice, that, hey, here's your favorite game that maybe you play every day. Maybe for boys will be, for Call of Duty or something, or Roblox maybe for girls. I don't know, but let's say you have that choice, and then maybe some sort of an educational system, right? Call it a game or some sort of a edutainment kind of a AI driven system, and then if they had to choose, and then they say, oh, it's really a tough choice because both are fun, right? If we could kind of get education to that level, then maybe, yeah, that could be truly revolutionary, because we are not there yet. I mean, the gaming,
sure.
the gaming stuff, the traditional gaming stuff, the video gaming, the first person shooters and strategy games and all that stuff kind of went kind of optimized, I would say, right? I mean, it optimized for the audience and really created a very high level of attraction. And we don't have that in education, like talking about math, for example, right? Like, can we make that happen, right? In some domains, right? So that, yeah, so definitely, yeah, this could be a great start.
So, okay, well, so far so good. So we've got some sort of training area, and I like this podcast called Ologies. I don't know if you've heard of this, but this is this woman who brings on someone who's an expert in like snails or something, right? And talks to them for about an hour about snails, but is very enthusiastic, very curious, etc. And after hearing this podcast, as many do, you probably know a little bit about snails. However, I want to switch it up, right? So now we've got this new ability, which is that you yourself need to interrogate this. So here's the idea that here's this podcast, we take it, we can strip out the dialogue or whatever, right?
Mm.
Then we need this, you to be the interviewer, right? And you're interviewing the expert. However, the expert is a character. And the reason I'm saying this is the prompt that I came up with because people don't like you said, they like some challenge. This is the whole point. Like they need to be engaged in something, and with someone just telling you something, the engagement is secondhand. Whereas if it's firsthand, I think you're going to build more connection, right? Just because you're in the first person, it's experiential. You are interviewing Bill Gates, not
Mm.
listening to somebody interview Bill Gates. So far, not
Yeah,
too
yeah,
uninteresting, right? That you've
yeah,
got
yeah.
the training ground, right? The topic is going to be snails.
Mm.
These characters, to me, are one of the more interesting things that I kind of was able to bake with help of GPT, of course, about like how do you be interesting yet not not like GPT is now, which is like, here you go. Here you go. Here's all you need, right? It's very like forthcoming. You see what I mean? You
Mm.
actually need to be questioning and reticent so that you draw people in as a character.
Mm.
So I've got many characters, and I would think also the characters could be something chosen by the user, right? What kind of character do you like? Do you like somebody who's whatever? I don't know. I've got a few prompts, and I started to converse with these prompts, and literally they're pretty interesting, right? I mean, these sort of training prompts about how to behave
Mm.
are a big part of how these engines are made anyway, right? They're trained to not be weird, I guess.
Mm.
But you can just you can, of course, give it a character to play, and then your character, and I guess this is the other part. There's something about voice, right? The voice thing to me, I don't know how possible it is to learn. I guess you and I are a good example, right? You're the expert and I'm the eager, curious one, right? And how much I learn at the end is sort of up to my own abilities, which are questionable. But either way, learning through voice, at least to me, opens up a lot of avenues that people don't like to read as much anymore, I don't believe, right? And video can be, I tried a new service that makes a video out of anything you say, and it's really annoying to me, right? Like because
Mm.
it's just tropes after tropes, right? Like if I say brainstem, somehow a picture of a brainstem appears, you know what I
Mm.
mean? And that to me is, yeah, whatever. Maybe in a couple of years, who knows? It's hard to be subtle when it
Mm.
comes to imagery. And we know it from watching YouTubes, right, where they just have B-roll behind everything. It's like, here it is, industry, people making, anyway.
Mm.
Sorry, that was a lot. How are you doing so far?
Yeah, yeah, very good. Yeah, I think that there's quite a few things to talk about in terms of let's say your characters.
Mhm.
So, for example, in talking about math, in the Wolfram system, Wolfram Alpha, and they have a Wolfram language. There is also a way to select the characters that you want to interact with. So you can interact with a medieval king or with some sort of maybe I don't know, some sort of a famous person or
Mhm.
whatever. So they have a collection of 20, 30 characters to choose from, and that will basically define the language of an answer that you're getting from the system. And by the way, the system is focusing on doing math, helping with solving equations and all that stuff. So there is definitely recognition already that you can have an AI system. You can load a bunch of writings maybe of a person. So if you want to be talk to Bill Gates,
Mhm.
you can kind of upload to the system his writings, or you can create a persona that is, let's say, two or three people together. So maybe you want to Bill Gates and Steve Ballmer, right, kind of in one, right? So you're going to combine the writings of those two and see what
All
comes
right.
out.
Worst nightmare, but keep going. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's very doable.
Yes. Well,
Yeah,
that's what I
yeah.
mean. I know this isn't quote unquote hard.
Mhm.
What I'm trying to get at, what is hard is the engagement layer, right? Because
Mhm.
it is already the oracle, right? The AI is already the oracle. It can give you the answer to everything and state it however you like, pretty much.
Mhm.
I don't see there's no dissonance. However, games are about dissonance. They're
Mhm.
about challenge. They're about not being able to get to it. So I'm saying that these prompts aren't just characters, but they're actually deceit, or not deceit. They're how you're going to um, withhold information, because information hard to get is more. I mean, I'm going into Kahneman's
Mhm.
system 1 and 2, right? If you have to work for it, you're going to remember it, right? And if it's given to you
Yeah.
for free, you will have little value. And so that's where this goal has to be. We have to keep you from the goal, but then there has to be some sort of outcome. So my thought is if you got an hour long podcast about snails and you had to be the interviewer,
Mhm.
um, then at the end we could give you some sort of status. Like, let's just say whatever the other interviewee got 10 facts and you only got one. I mean, anyway, there'd be some sort of rank at the end, right? There'd be some sort of
Mhm.
feedback loop to say your goal toward this educational experience is fair. Next
Mhm.
time, try asking more questions. I have no idea, right? I mean, the biggest problem here is how in the hell would you build this? This is what I don't get. Like, I know how this thing over there takes input and how I can give it a character, but how do I architect, this kind of I can't even figure out how to get voice on my own computer. Sorry, Jack. So I'm like at a loss. Like, it doesn't seem impossible, but what am I missing?
Yeah, so today, the way we are architecting basically generative AI systems is that the foundation, the engine that the kind of on the left hand side, I'm kind of suggesting, the engine of experience, right? So the experience will be defined in basically natural language text. And then
Yeah.
you just take it and you run with it, right? So if you need to generate voice, it's going to be text to voice, large language
Mhm.
model that is going to do that, right? So the voice layer is requiring a generative capability that takes text and creates the intonation, creates the maybe the tone and the maybe persona, right, that will have certain inflection, certain personality conveyed through the audio modality, right? What NVIDIA and many others are doing right now is that they are also connecting voice with a synthetic character, right? So the diamond that you have with voice can be kind of augmented or expanded to basically synthetic character that will have the voice capability with the lip syncing and everything else, right? So the so the interaction method probably is something that may be the key to success. Because if you look at what happened to Second Life, for example, like a decade ago or whatever, I used to go to game development conferences, and they were all very often featured, and their talks basically were, hey, we are taking over the world, right? We're gonna do commerce in Second Life. We're gonna have those rooms where education will happen, so people will sit in those Second Life rooms and learn about stuff, basically kind of augmenting their educational experiences. So they were kind of doing everything, and then kind of everything went away, and perhaps there was
Hmm.
like business model issues and stuff like that, but there was also probably things that they were missing, that there was not enough interaction kind of support uh, through those visual arts that a lot more than I do. That there's stuff that there was missing, right? There was maybe so low bandwidth, there was not enough resolution. Maybe there was kind of missing engagement components in the voice and in the imagery that kind of made the interaction kind of shallow. So yeah, so this is so yeah, so I think that yeah, but the language, the underlying language, will be natural language because that's where LLMs are really shining.
Oh, 100%. And as far as I know, I think Google's phones already have some sort of voice-based assistant. I'm not really worried about voice. I'm saying that's a interaction method, right? You could type as well. I don't really care about this layer. I guess what I don't understand and probably what killed off Second Life is architecture, because I don't know like how to avoid, like, let's say the first choice you need to make and it's saying, hey, I could be Bill, Jane, or Fred, right? Like that's from us. We are coming up with this, right? We're coming up with this conceit. This is a design. This is our designed part, right? Is the description of these characters. We are also feeding it this podcast and podcast topic, I'm assuming, right? Like we are saying, hey, here you go. Here's the training. I know how to do that with Google, for example, because it already creates a podcast. If you've seen Notebook LM, you give it anything and it'll create a two-person podcast out of it, which is kind of the inspiration
Mhm.
here. What I'm saying is, well, I want to go one step further, right? Which is that you or over here, and sorry if I'm not making this too clear because this seems like layers, right? This seems like architecture to me, right? This part gets fed anything, if that makes sense, right? It doesn't care what it gets fed. These characters are characters that they are existing separately.
Mhm.
This is a method, that comes our computers already talk, right? But we just get it to talk. And that's fine, that's they can do that.
Mhm.
It can listen to, I'm assuming, just because I do
Mhm.
that with GPT, that was that thing.
Mhm.
What I'm saying that becomes harder is these two things. Like where are they, right? Like the characters may not know about progress toward goal. Maybe. I don't know. I mean, that's where I'm lost on architecture is the point, right? Like how would you build it?
Mhm.
Or how would you I'm just want an experiment to be quite honest and fail at
Mhm.
it and maybe
Mhm.
learn something. But each of the tools seems so set in its architecture, right? Like I get one system prompt. I don't get a choice of system prompts, if I'm
Yeah,
making
so
sense.
that is changing a little bit. So I think that if we look at your diagram, we can kind of divide it into like those verticals, and all those verticals are basically training capabilities, right? So the topic, is a place where you can basically train the system in the content of the topic. So this is your training, but then your character one and character two, that also becomes part of training, because
Hmm.
for all of those verticals you can basically select a documentation, right? Like you can add papers, you can look maybe for transcripts or whatever, and for all of those you basically create you have frameworks where you basically dump the documentation into those frameworks, and those kind of become give you the learning capability of the system. So the machine learning can happen for the topic. The machine learning will train the characters that you want. The machine learning will allow you to generate the voice capabilities that you desire. The learning in terms of the theory of the progression and goal, resolution towards a goal, it's also something that you can provide training for. And then the rankings and the feedbacks and everything else, the outcomes, you can also train the system to provide outcome frameworks that you desire based on the training set. So all of those become training areas in frameworks that allow you to provide documentation, textual, multimedia, or whatever, that kind of allow for that training, because uh, at each stage you can perform machine learning on the system or the modules of the system to kind of achieve the goals that you want.
I think that's where my brain or at least I don't know where in the tool. So if I'm running my own LLM, I can sort of get from here to at least one of these because I don't know how to. I even told it to have, and this is weird. Maybe you can laugh at me. I'm like, I told the prompt, I'm like, hey, there's a secret word, right? Like for any interaction that you're going to have it toward the quote unquote user, right? But if I
Mhm.
give you the keyword admin, we can talk at a different level. Pretty
Mhm.
smart, right? Except it didn't work. So I'm sort of curious, like, how do you like get well, this is what I think of this layer here. Like, how do you have this meta layer of understanding were you any good? Now, you're right. The systems themselves have this layer, right? Hey, you're a good model, good for you, or you're
Mhm.
bad model, or whatever. Like, right? They do, don't they?
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, yeah.
oh, okay. So there's
Well,
some weird layer. Well, you see what I mean? It's meta, though, right? It is talking about this, but is it using the same code as this? Like now we can go back into philosophy. Maybe I should turn this off. Is there anything about this that's interesting? I don't know before I turn it
well,
off. And
there is, right. So essentially, you will have an interplay between systems.
yes.
So, for example, let's talk about the character. Well, the character will be receiving certain outputs and will be receiving certain inputs, and that those will be user questions or
Hmm.
some sort of a general form of interaction, maybe kind of not on the topic necessarily. Maybe I would want to talk to this character, not necessarily to learn about calculus, but maybe just have a social interaction, right?
Yep.
So that layer here is basically allowing the system to generate output that is compatible with character X, right? Character one or character two, right? So that's one part of the system, right? And that system generates text, right, and may go to a voice subsystem, so that text will be converted to voice, so the user doesn't see the text on screen, but it can hear the voice.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
see
As I
that
said,
you will
this
have a
part doesn't seem
yeah
that hard, right?
yeah you will have modules that are kind of interacting here. Now the difficulty here with this diagram, which kind of at some level is very good, but at some level, once you start getting into software engineering of this, right, then that progress towards a goal is gonna have to be really tightly correlated with the character, right? Because the character needs to know whether we are talking about a goal or something else, right? So there needs to be a very big arrow between the characters and the engine of the system, call it an engine of experience or an engine of education or whatever, that is kind of allowing you to assess where you are going. So for example, well, is the question about math, right, or is the question about something else? Maybe the character needs to know, or the AI needs to know that, well, not feeling too well today, maybe it should impact the main topic of the system, or main objective of the system somehow, right? So the progression towards the goal, at the very, very simplistic architecture, maybe without any AI, although it was sometimes called AI, it's going to be some sort of a blackboard architecture, where there's basically a table, and the AI is going to be just kind of like checking out, hey, intro to calculus done, right? Basic basic integrals done, right? So we now can move to double integrals or triple integrals, right? So progress towards the goal needs to be tracked by a system that can be that has to understand, that has to have an ontology about what we want to talk about, right? And maybe it's about math. It's going to be very simple. It's kind of like a curriculum, right? Lesson one, lesson two. If you finish lesson one, you just check it out. Oh, now I can move to lesson two, right? So So this becomes something that is an interplay between the character and the engine that maintains the progress, that is going to now kind of like evaluating the outputs. So so I think that maybe next time we can kind of dive into this diagram from a more technical point of view. But but this is a very good high level introduction of what we want to do. It's just every single piece of it requires a little bit of an attention, how you do it.
Well, and hopefully you're seeing the reason behind this. And by the way, don't forget this started with me trying to recreate Eliza, right? As we are all trying to recreate Eliza, which is that I'm not going to give you the answer. I'm just going to continue to engage with you, right? So
Exactly. Yeah.
that's the character part. The character can be, maybe we have a character called like, I'll just skip. If you really struggle, I'll give you the answer. I don't know, whatever. And this makes sense too, that, maybe the second character is not, it's going to be more withholding. Does that make sense? So you get to choose a little bit of your adventure, but I'm still understand architecturally, right? This has to be based, because you want this to be a variable, right? You don't care. I don't care what the topic is. I don't want to build a curriculum. My hero here, is Jonathan Blow, and I think we talked about this last week about the Witness. I know it's not a game you've played, but one important part of the Witness is it's absolutely 1000% deliberate. Like, it is completely designed by a human. Okay. There is no way for a computer to have, it can do a little, but not anything real, right? Whereas most games or any other situations are much more open-ended, but then again, you never know what's going to happen. See, so this progress toward goal layer is puzzling to me, right? Like, something has to have a higher purpose, because you can just keep the conversation going, but actually this is a lesson. So where would this exist in? I don't even know where this would exist architecturally, but I know it can't be here, like it can't be in the thing.
All right, so so basically it can exist in all places that you have, right? So for example, let's say character is the engine. Let's say the character AI is running the show. So that would mean that the character AI will basically ask the progress towards the goal module, hey, where are we? Right?
Right.
Are we at the beginning? Right? So it will ask this module to provide background, and that will be attached basically as context to the speech generation process or text generation process, to kind of guide the user or conduct the interaction, right? It can also ask the ranking system, hey, is this user really advanced, or maybe kind of just a beginner, or never gets anything right, or we don't know anything about them, right? So the character can run the show. So the AI is going to have basically pieces of context plus the character definition, and based on that, the AI is going to create a package that is going to the user, right? So it's just going to be conversation is going to be driven that way. Or, right, you might have, for example, the progress towards the goal is the engine, right? So it will basically look at its own state, right? How the current description of the character of the user looks like, right? And then based on that, it will say, hey, it will call the character module, hey, talk to the user, about some sort of introductory thing, because here's the situation, right? So it's going to send the context situation to the character, and the character is going to generate the whatever natural language is necessary to kind of run the show, right? Or maybe the ranking system is going to be the main engine, right? The ranking system is going to have access to the progress of the user, and it will have access to the character. And based on the ranking system will kind of see, okay, here's the ranking, here's the progress. Okay, so I'm gonna call the character, make the character talk, given the context that I'm sending, right? So so there is, so the agentic interaction where you have the measurement, you have the input, you have the output, that agentic interaction can be driven by an agent that is a progress agent, or maybe
Hmm.
it's a ranking agent, or maybe it's a character agent that is basically focusing on doing the NLP, but grabbing all the relevant stuff from everywhere else on this diagram. So yeah, these are all interesting architectures, right? Or I think like we have in gaming, right? Kind of traditional video gaming, right? There's going to be multiple engines, and really kind of the main game engine is running strictly, kind of like a part of the show, and then there is a video engine that is kind of running the most of the show, and they kind of talk to each other in a kind of like a peer-to-peer situation. So yeah, so I would say that yeah, there could be a lot of arrows in your diagram.
Oh, absolutely. And that's why I'm curious because while it seems doable, right? And I built a Eliza like character,
Mm,
and it was good. Actually, it was fine. It was fun to interact with. What I started to lose, and I think that's maybe one of the issues about AI in general, right? Is that it just gives us the answer. You see what I mean? Like it isn't a game. It's very way too forthcoming. And when we ask questions, it's very complimentary. Yet,
mm,
if there is an actual challenge involved, we might have to step up our game. You see what I mean? Which is
mm,
fun, right? Why not? If you can truly engage someone, that's where I'm taking this away from somebody who's very curious and self-motivated and trying to think, well, what if you weren't? Would this be a gateway for you, right? Like, would this uh, appeal to the Candy Crush crowd, or whatever, that
mm,
or the podcast crowd, because I don't think it's that far off, right? I mean, we're trying in a sense to um, micro engage ourselves all the time. I think people are certainly interested in social media and TikToks, and I don't know. There's some of it is pure entertainment, but a lot of it is about possible new way of being educated. I'm gonna cut this off just because I feel like I'm not talking. Hold on, let me do this. There we go. Back. But but in your mind, the architecture, that's
mm,
the confusing part. I know these exist except for the progress toward goal module, but I'm
mm,
assuming because of the ability to make lists and checklists and stuff, like it could derive a set of goals out of a podcast, right? You could just say, hey,
of
step
course.
one,
Mm,
come up with learning goals, right? I mean, seems
mm,
pretty easy, but hide them,
mm,
yet somehow use that in order to with along with this very sketchy character, right? The character has
mm,
to be not an all-knowing computer. It has to be Eliza, you know?
mm.
Am I making any sense at all? I feel like these are all inside baseball things. So, by the way, if no one knows what ELIZA is, first computer program that basically just used little bits of text, contextual text, to make people think that it was really quite
Mm,
profoundly um, engaged in
mm,
and got people to do things that they wouldn't normally do just through, kind of gaming human perception, right? That,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And I don't know really if those check marks and those steps kind of is the make or break of the system, right? Like, hey, I achieved 1% of the goal. Okay, so I can now move to the second percent, right? And so forth. Um, this is all, kind of maybe I can share my screen for a second and kind of maybe let's see again, it's kind of difficult to share something here, but let's say Um, yeah, maybe I can. Okay, do you see my screen right now?
Yeah, sure.
This paper, right? So this paper here is about kind of studying games and good gamers versus good managers. The premise here is that, let's say we have a system, and the civilization game is essentially a very complex resource management system that you have to grasp. So I always thought about civilization as well. How can we get somebody to actually impose on themselves such a huge cognitive load, so that they would be sitting for hours or maybe months or years, playing civilization and manage so many parameters, optimizing them, and kind of get ahead in the game, right? How did they manage to actually get people to play the game, right? Because
Sure. Yeah.
there is so much complexity in there, and I think that is kind of something that is kind of I think pivotal, right? Like uh, that there has to be those hooks, those experiences that people actually crave, so they would kind of play a game like that. And there is other games that are kind of much, so StarCraft, for example, much faster pace, possibly with even higher numbers of complexity and parameter optimization. So I just wanted to kind of say, hey, there is those steps that you are kind of accomplishing in a game that maybe are kind of steps towards the goal, but once you get there, then they move the goal further away from you, right? So
Sure. Oh, yeah, yeah.
so so at the end of the day, right, you are kind of not really in a rigid environment where there is like a number of check boxes that you fulfill, and then okay, you won, right? So yeah, so that is something that I kind of always think about when designing interaction.
Oh, well, and I guess, I'd say the same. Obviously, you need to communicate, right? This
Mm,
sort
mm,
of progress toward goal, and again, games are great. They have a lot of conceits.
mm,
One reason I do like The Witness quite a bit is there are no, well, there's some. You obviously progress, right? That's the only thing. There's no explanation, right? There's no words. They
mm,
don't explain to you how or why things work. However, you do see this concept of progression, and you can see how this progression, as with many things, opens up new areas. That's basically the idea, right? Like, hey, if you progress, then you can see more and do more within a particular topic, which is very similar, right? This
mm.
feeling of, it's not unnatural, and since it's a game, I'm sure Civilization, is it one of those, I guess, 100-hour kind of games, or I don't know if it has any chapters or anything. I've played a few of those sort of resource games where, yeah, you have some, you can stop, right? You can't,
Mm,
like, you can go away and not be worried uh, uh, about
mm,
anything real happening, that you can either finish a chapter. I don't know. There's all sorts of conceits that you can add to this. That's why I said, podcast could be, um, it's one nugget, of
yeah,
of
yeah,
something. Like for example, that paper could be also the training. Hey, are you a good
exactly. Yeah,
manager? Well,
yeah,
yeah, I think so. Well, really, tell
yeah.
me about how do you
Mhm.
manage your budget? Well, I do it this way. I don't know. I mean, you can tease
Exactly. Yeah.
out learning
Mhm.
situations from
Mm,
anything where currently we don't have, and it's on my last list because I'm a big fan of this, is that knowledge is social proof, right? Knowledge isn't information. It's
mm,
the ability to use it in a social situation, right? And that's why I deliberately
mm.
use the word leaderboard or any concept like that. Like, you want to show off. It's why we have degrees, as you and I both know. Helmet Up was fond of saying, right? It's a piece of paper. you
Mm,
know, it's a meaningless piece of paper, but yet, hey, there you go, right? Um,
mm.
Sorry, all those
Yeah,
doctorates out there, right? But
yeah, yeah. Well, I think we are at the stage where we identified some components of a system that maybe we can kind of dive into and start designing them. So maybe for our next meeting we can kind of start thinking about, hey, so we want a character, right? Character number
Mhm.
one or character number two. How would we build this, right? And then kind of get into, oh, we want goal monitoring. How would we do that,
Yes,
right? And
100%.
so perhaps next time we can kind of, you can use your machinery, your DeepSeek, and I can use mine, and kind of think about maybe more kind of practically how a character could be designed and how it would function, kind of by looking at actual code that kind of runs the character. So yeah, so I think we are moving towards something that could be an interesting practical experiment.
Sounds great. As always, that's what I need, Jack, is the confidence to know that it is possible. It might not be probable, but as long as there's something.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, so we can kind of compare our approaches to character development. So here's a topic for our next meeting, right?
Yep, I agree.
Generative AI for character development, applied to education or management or however we
Whatever.
want, right? Uh, so I think this could be an interesting step.
Will do. Can't wait till next time then. And perfect timing as well as always, Jack. Have a wonderful weekend. We will be back, and all will be revealed, as they say, in our next
Exactly,
episode.
exactly, exactly. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Talk to you soon.
Cheers.